Hello, everyone. We're running just a little bit behind schedule, but we'll be starting in about 2 minutes. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I hope everyone's well recovered from the gala dinner by now. We're going to be starting session 3, the Internet of Things, Big Data and Analytics. Very privileged to have a great panel of speakers today from cities, civil society, and without further ado, I will introduce you to Ms. Meliana Frederica of UN Pulse Lab Jakarta, who will be the moderator this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope it is okay with the light. We can always turn it on if you feel that you need more light, but it will help some of the presentation. And welcome to this session, uh, Internet of Things, Big Data and Analytics. Big words. I'm happy that I will have 5 distinguished speakers with me that will be sharing their journey and experience in Internet of Things and Big Data. Um, I would like to ask the speakers to join me here on the stage. Please take your seat. I will introduce them one by one. From the left side to the right side, we have Mr. Eldar Tuzmuhametov. Hi, head of Smart City Lab at the Department of IT of Moscow government. Mr. Elder is responsible for search and implementation of innovative technologies and smart management practices in Moscow. Before joining, he worked as CIO in consulting agencies, and also he was leading consultant for Moscow government in development and implementation of Active Citizen, a citywide voting app that engaged 1.2 million in less than a year. He will talk today about digital revolution shaping the future of smart city. And our second speaker, Mr. Barzilai from Oh, no, doctor. I'm so sorry. Mr. Barzilai, Chief of Business Development and Innovation Officer from Jerusalem. He has over 30 years of executive level experience, and he lived nearly 14 years in Europe, served as founder and CEO of several pan-European high-tech companies. Um, Today, he will share about Jerusalem smart city project and how actually he will overcome a lot of challenges in that project. The third speakers, again from here, Mikhail Bunchuk from the World Bank Operation Officer. Um, before joining World Bank, Mikhail worked in the Russian Research Institute of Economic Policy Law in Science and Technology. And starting from 2000, he has been involved in a number of World Bank supported projects focusing on digital economy, digital government, IT, industrial development. Most recently, he has been tasked for a project involving adversary support for Russia's Ministry of Telecom and Mass Communication in preparation in the digital economy program. He's also involved in a number of analytical work from the World Bank, among others, Digital Government 2020, Prospect for Russia, and Broadband in Russia. Today, he will talk about the socio-economic benefit of from big data for smart city. And then we have Mr. Josh Choi, Program Coordinator from ITU, International Telecommunication Union. He has extensive knowledge on political and technical trends on ICT, and his interest area are big data, blockchain, AI, digital finance, financial inclusion, IoT, ICT for education, and today he will speak about ABC, not the alphabet. This one is artificial intelligent banking and cities. We will have our last speaker later on. I'll introduce him later. It will be Mr. Kiwan Lee, Director for the Information Planning Division of Seoul Metropolitan Government. Yeah, there will be a time where they speak and also Q&A, but I will start with this. There's always something like this. Where is it? Oh, okay. Anyone familiar with this or ever take these kind of things? No one? I guess you are lucky. I still have to do this a couple of years ago. If I want to get data updated, I have to go out, walk, go to the site, draw the line, draw the road, draw the building, talk to people so that I can get the data that I wanted. It takes a lot of papers and pen and strong leg for walking and sunblock for an area like Indonesia. But now this can be done easily. Survey like that, thanks to technology, it can be done with mobile phone and tablet and no time. You want to know what are the conversation people have? Social media is our new listening tool, right? Weather sensors are everywhere. Any one of you ever done origin destination survey? Takes time and a lot of money. And now call detail record from our mobile phone can reveal mobility pattern. Now it is possible for us to know what people say and what people do in real time continuously. Welcome, Mr. Lee. So new technologies are leading to exponential increase of data. And this creates a new opportunities to informing and transforming society and also protecting our environment. The office where I work, I come from a UN Pulse Lab Jakarta. This is one out of 3 lab of United Nations Global Pulse, innovation lab that harness new data sources for policymakers and humanitarian works. And we see these values in big data. So when I talk about journey on making actionable insights, first, we need to embrace the technology. I like the term embrace because it implies process. Embracing new technology does not come overnight. And it's not always easy. I'm sure like most of you have that experience firsthand. We need time to learn, to know the new technology, to operate new hardware, to use new software, to apply new mobile platform. And moreover, a city must also address the safety and usability issues that come with adopting new technology. But it can certainly worth the learning curve. Let me share you a story from working with one organization. So they came to us to Pulse Lab Jakarta. I want to get data really fast for our next survey. I don't want to use paper and pen. Fine. Can you use that with tablet? Of course. So we create that survey and they said, I want everything, text, photo, geotag. Sure, we can do that. And we really do that in fast time, in rapid time. Immediately we show them the result. Nothing happened. I was surprised. I thought they didn't get it. And why nothing happened? So they are overwhelmed. They're not used with such a fast amount of data in such a short time. They don't know what to do with it. In the end, all the information we collect, we ended up just using the text. The rest of the information, it goes nowhere, unfortunately. A speedy data collection that resulted in little insight and almost no action at all. It's a big challenge. I mean, in digital era, when we our needs change, we also change the way we use services. And in digital era, these changes actually leave pattern in data in real time. So we are actually sensors of network that provide policymakers um, about our human well-being. It needs analytics so we know what does it mean for the average person, so we can take an informed decision. In other words, analytics matter. It's not enough just to put technology in place, especially with data comes data analytics, and with big data it's so messy, it's so unstructured, just like our real life. It's a complex world that rarely fits nicely into row and columns that traditional approach require. So the success of this depends on sufficient analytical capacity among implementer and also key stakeholders. But the question is it enough for us to get really actionable insights? Let me share to you another story. Pulse Lab Jakarta create haze gazer. You know, we have a forest fire that creates haze. So this is a prototype which bring different kind of data sources to provide insights on haze events across Indonesia. The tools analyze open data, aggregate citizen feedback, and we also use social media analytics. But then we're not only looking and create this platform, we conduct a data dive and identify trends and behavior from the severe haze in 2015, 2 years ago. When we look and when we dive, that brought questions like what causes the haze and how people use information, what are the impact to health, to education, to transportation. So we went there using in-depth interview, gain context on trend and anomalies. We sent our ethnographer to look at how local people coping with the situation. And we also try to find assets and also innovators with the issue associated with forest fires and haze. In combination, the team developed not only numbers, but also intimate knowledge on local dynamics and also capabilities. Because big data alone is not enough, and it's actually never enough. In the office, we have a team of data science full of data engineer, data scientists, but another team is actually the social system where we establish a service design team. Why? Because we want to augment our finding from the big data. It's a term that initiated by Tricia Wong, a thick data, where we use ethnographic approach to uncover meaning behind big data visualization and analysis. So what we're looking for here is insight with a particular range of data points. And we also would like to know this part, the blue part, to get the insight. Take example from the haze that I mentioned earlier. We're not only knowing trend and anomalies during the crisis in that area, but we also uncover stories. Why it is important? Because we want to uncover inspirations. During crisis, we want to act. We want to provide solutions to that. So with thick data, you're not only giving what happened, probably not so much on why, but we can also try to answer, and so what we can do about it. Using this lens, the issue we can explore further was not why only this happened or not, but also we can find missing opportunities. It's an interactive interaction. It's a journey that's not linear. It's actually a combination of all these things that can provide us a two-way communication between the government and the citizen, because we start with our citizen and we end it also with them. It's actually a very citizen-centered approach so that this Internet of Things and big data can actually help them to have a better quality of life. And with that, I will end my introduction uh, presentation, and I will let all these five distinguished speakers to speak about their own journey in using this in their activity. Thank you. Okay, I will give the first chance to you. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So where's my presentation? How it works? Okay. So hello everybody. I will speak English. This is I'm representing the Department of IT of Moscow government. The Small City Lab is responsible for the coordination of all small city activities between different departments for the selection and the implementation of innovations of some disruptive technologies for researchers and also for international cooperation, for sharing experience and getting more information about what other cities do. So I will speak about some very practical cases of how we do use big data and how we use IoT for provision of public services, for collecting data, for improving the efficiency of the government and lives of our citizens in Moscow. Like this, yeah. So that's basic. That's basic. Why we do everything in the city? We want to save our costs. We want to improve the efficiency of the governmental solutions, the decision-making process, because before we got so many big data, before this era, many of the decision was done like this. Okay, let's do this. Okay, it works or not. Now we got the data to make the right decision. And finally, to provide our customers, we consider the city as a service, and in Moscow we consider the citizens our customers to provide them with new, better services. So one of the largest area in which we invested a lot of resources within last 5 years from 2011 is our system of delivery of public services. 2011, there were only 4 or 7 public services available online. It was a mess. You got to take one paper in one place, then the second paper in the second place, then you have to go to the third place with 2 papers, put a stamp, then go to another place, and bring those papers to get. Now we got a unified online system, a unified portal, mobile applications, SMS usage service, when you can get 200 public services online. And last year we proceeded 650 million requests. It means that through our the system of delivery of public services, you can enroll your children to school, you can apply for a new passport, for the new driver license, you can pay for housing and utilities and everything. So with this system, we now got around 9 million citizens in the system, and we collect a lot of data about them, about what they need, about how they live. Its data is depersonalized, but it allows now us to go to the next stage. And now we're working on the system of pre-delivery of public services. We piloted it last year with a notification system. So, for example, we know the drivers, we know where they live, and we know where their roadworks are planned, for example. This is big data that allows us send them automatically through the preferable for them channel with push or with SMS or with email a notification. So this today, dear driver, there is road work planned, so please use metro. This is how big data can improve the real decision-making process of the citizen in the morning and make his day. For the future, next year, we're going to launch the pre-delivery of services. It means that, for example, now you got to enroll your children to school, you can send a request through the online platform, but in the future, the citizen will have no need to send any requests, because we know if children is 6 years old, it's time to think for his parents about the school. So we can send an email. So you got 3 schools, you got 3 options. Just click the button and get your children enrolled. Or If your passport is expiring, we know where your passport is expiring. So we can send you a message and just send us a photo, and you'll get the passport ready within 3 days in a multifunctional center. So this is the idea of what we're working now. Also, the second point of future development of system of public services is a chatbot, which also works using a lot of data, because you see we still have 10 mobile applications, 20 SMS uses these same services, and we believe that this is still pretty uncomfortable for citizens to manage all these applications, website, and everything, too much channels of communication. So the next stage, we're going to launch the next year a chatbot when it will be only one application. You will send, where's my car, pay for the parking, how much should I pay for utilities and services, and immediately pushing the button, you will pay for all this stuff. So we think that chatbot is the only and the best way to manage the delivery of public services, which also works using big data and artificial intelligence. Okay, next, transportation. It's obvious, those who've been in Moscow know that we got great transportation system. How it works, for example, IoT, we got 1,500 cameras in the city, and we issue around from 50,000 to 100,000 traffic fines per day. This is how IoT brings a lot of money to the budget and keeps our roads safe and keeps the order on the streets. So another interesting thing, we got 32,000 vehicles in the city, all with GPS. It's necessary. We automatically monitor when, for example, snow comes. AI identifies which streets should be cleaned first, which streets should be cleaned then, and etc. But it's interesting thing that we got all these cars on the contracts with different private companies providing us with these services. When we put sensors, GPS sensors on these cars, at some moment we think, okay, great, these cars are cleaning the streets, fantastic. But at some moment we have seen that the car is just running around with no water blowing, with no sand blowing, just running around and firing the fuel. So now we're implementing another level of sensors, operation mode sensors, to identify if the car really works or it just travels around the streets for fun. Resource battering, just I want a unified IoT system. This only life hack that I want to share with the representatives of cities. Don't play with pilots and make unified, centralized, citywide systems from the very beginning to provide your customers, to provide suppliers with a unified platform with unified standards, because now our systems for metering is ready to receive the information from any kind of sensors, from any kind of meters. So it's important to build a unified systems. It's much easier to manage them. Education, we got unified online platform. We got there, all the marks are online. Children hate us because they receive because their parents receive short messages with marks, and if something went wrong on the exam, parents know this and waiting like this for their children at home. So with online diaries, we get the information about the performance of children, about the performance of each class, about the performance of each school. So we can, using this data, analyze how efficient is the teacher, how efficient is the director of the school, how we should change the program for a class. For example, we see some classes are better in sciences, and other children is better in Russian language and English language and something. So we can customize the educational program based on this data that we can get from the whole city through unified system of online diaries. The same happening in healthcare. We implemented 3 years ago a unified platform. On its front end is a system for online appointments to doctors. On its back end, it's a system, resource management system for clinics. We're also now implementing online medical track records. It's also collecting a lot of data about the efficiency of doctors, efficiency of clinic. So it's a real tool to evaluate how efficient is the system, to evaluate the different practices, how efficient they are, and to develop some correlations between, for example, ecology, between traffic system, between healthcare. And the last case, it's not here, but I think it would be interesting for you. So we're now working a lot with AI. Within the last year, we fed to our artificial intelligence around 6,000 CT images, and now we're integrating in this platform a decision-making support system, which will identify, for example, things like cancer or other bad things on the photos automatically, because doctors can be tired, they can be of low quality, just young doctors, and the system will automatically, based on big data and on AI, will help them to make right decisions and to identify big problems in the same interface when they work. So that's all. I got 1 minute. I hope that it was interesting. So in case you got any questions, I will answer them later. Thank you.
Let's give warm applause. And next, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ethan Barsilai.
Hi, good morning to you. My name is Eitan. And to those who didn't see the presentation yesterday, I mean, I'll repeat the presentation about Jerusalem, about our effort in the smart city. And today I'm going to cover a few points about Jerusalem as a smart city. I won't get into the applications. I just talk about the concept and some of the ideas we have about how to implement it. And I'll probably repeat what was said here before, some of it. I'd like to introduce to you two technologies that we are using today in the smart city. You know that Israel is considered to be the startup nation, or what I call Disneyland of technologies. So actually, we've chosen two technologies to show you how actually they're being implemented in the city. Then I'll talk about the very important relationship, or the very importance that we actually relate to the relationship between the public and the private sector, because eventually most of the technologies are coming from the private sector, so we need to actually relate to them. And at the end, I'll talk about a little bit about the digital citizen engagement and the way that actually we're communicating with the our audience and our citizens. So what you see, let's say our slogan is Jerusalem, 3,000 years of innovation. And if you visit Jerusalem, I mean, you see some of the technologies that were implemented actually very many years ago. It's not the same technology that we're talking about, so we won't talk about that. So I'll go straight into the smart city. And what you see here is actually the picture of our new business district that is actually being planned and being designed and start to be built as we speak. It's going to be 24 towers, all LEED standards. So we're talking about sustainability, over a million square meters, and a lot of futuristic technology. It's really going to be smart cities. So I'm just showing this picture. So when you saw the past and now you see the future, let's talk to what we're doing today. And I think that actually I'm going to repeat what was just said before. There are two decisions that we made actually when we come and talk about smart cities. First, we don't like the word pilot. We don't like to actually allocate a park or a square or a street, stuff it with technology, show how it works, and feel very good about it that we are actually running a smart city. So we are really going to, or we're adopting the full comprehensive solution for the city in every aspect of it. There is a master plan for deploying the technologies in the city. It's not to say that we're starting everywhere immediately. Obviously, there are limitations, there are priorities and limitations when it comes to budgets, but that's the way we're going to do it. And then the second thing is relating to, again, it was said before, decide what the platform is going to be, because every application that you're going to implement in the city, they'll come with their own programs, they'll come with their own command and control software, and there's going to be no relationship, and the system will not orchestrate accordingly. So we decided what unified management smart city platform we have. It's a digital platform. And when I'm looking at these pictures, actually, I'm looking just about on two technologies that are showing here. Talk about them. One is the city lighting. I think it's the most lucrative application in smart cities. The saving that we can reach is like 60, 70% and even more. There's a lot of money to be made for the city, for the contractors. So this job can be done and the city can make quite a lot of money if the business model is right. And then the other one is actually going into the public safety. I think this was the first major smart city effort that was done in Jerusalem for obvious reasons. I mean, we're talking about secured city. And I think that today in Europe, in the United States, people understand more the need for all these coverage of cameras. I'll just show you how the command and control center is going to be look like. Actually, it is in the making now. The first line, the green area is going to be for routine. All these panels on the walls are going to be showing the security issues and the smart city applications, dashboards, etc. And in emergencies, all the stakeholders will be the police, fire brigade, etc. With that, I'd like to actually introduce to you the major problem that we are facing today is bandwidth in the city. How do we deploy a network that has the bandwidth to actually operate all these applications we're talking about? Because yes, there are cameras that have been connected via point-to-point, 2.4 gigahertz, and they have been interrupted all the time by Bluetooth and by other 2.4 gigahertz devices. So the quality is not good. We need the quality. We need to be able to transfer freely videos, and it's not just for security reasons. So what we try to do is the obvious thing. Let's go and actually deploy fiber optics in the city. But unfortunately, in Jerusalem, it's just impossible. Jerusalem is built on rocks. You cannot really dig in the ground 60 or 90 centimeters because you need to use very big devices and machines. This one is a small machine that I'm showing. Actually, that should be bigger. And it's very expensive and it's very disruptive for the population. So we were looking for different solution. And here's the technology that we actually adopted and we are implementing now. This is a fiber-like network. So we are replacing the fiber with a wireless solution. We are talking about a completely different spectrum of frequencies. We are going into the 70 to 80 gigahertz. So no one is actually interrupting us. We are not interrupting anyone. And as you can see, this is actually a deployment of these devices. And we are talking here about really transferring between 1 to 5 gigabit per second all over the city. And that can be used for quite a lot of applications that we talk about in a second. The only problem we had was actually to get it, we need a license from the Ministry of Communication. And that's not easy. Actually, it's next to impossible. The only ones to get actually this license were the 3 operators, cellular operators, and the police. That's it. So we asked nicely, and we didn't believe it, but we received this license. So today we are deploying, as I said, our own private network. We'll decide where and how. And as I said, it's going to be also a money-saving exercise because we'll be able to replace a lot of metro and SDH lines that cost us a lot of money. I'm talking about millions of shekels every year. And if I'm looking at the applications that we'll be able to use with this, start with is the cameras, as I said. And what you see here is really very high-end cameras. These cameras are ultra HD, 4K, 180 degrees or 360 degrees with a lot of analytics. They can be used for security. They can be used for any other thing like, as we can see here, parking and enforcement and traffic control. And one of the most important things, I believe that, and we are relating to this, the education is really important part in the smart city effort. So we'll be able to bring very high speed internet to schools. 2 weeks ago, I was in a school, 1,500 computers in the school, and they're using about 200 megabit. So it's not enough, and actually this should be changed. One of the things we're showing on the right-hand side here is actually this type of beam that we are talking here. It's a very narrow beam, doesn't affect anyone. I will not get into too much more information about that. And okay, we'll go to the next technology that I wanted to show you. And the next technology is deploying a 3D layer on our GIS. The GIS actually is made by us in Jerusalem, and we would like to actually put a 3D layer. And we're not talking about diagonal photography, we're talking about aerial photography. And this is going to be the largest project in such a low resolution. Just imagine yourself, every pixel on the screen is only 3 centimeters. You don't have things like that. Just to compare, 5 centimeters per pixel is a third of the amount of data that you have to process. So the technology is first, the camera is not important that much. And then we'll see what we can do with it. To start with, we can show how we put the camera on a building and see what's visible and what is not visible. We can measure the size of the building. That's for taxation reasons. We can check for building irregularities. We can also look at this as urban planning. We just put a building somewhere in the city, and we can actually measure and check the shadow every hour of the day. It's an algorithm to just say, you know, this time of the day, this time of the year, what actually shadow we are going to have. And this is one of the things, you know, we can use it for. Probably, I'd just like to show you in a very short clip, how does it look like? And what you'll be able to see is how actually we're taking a photocopy, you know, an aerial photo. And then by actually changing them in, you know, the mouse wheel, we are turning it into 3D. It's the King David Hotel, by the way. And then it will go back to where it started. So that's how it looks like. You see, it's starting with, going very fast for me, but then it started just as a picture, as an aerial. Then you see the 3D. Again, we are looking at camera deployment. This is, by the way, where President Trump was staying when he was in Israel. And you see it goes back to an aerial photography. So from that, I'll go to a different subject, which is, I think, very, very important. And I think that my recommendation is really to adopt it. I'm coming myself from the private sector. I'm very short time in the public sector. And we have a lot of cooperation going with the large companies on one hand. For example, Cisco, we have an agreement with Cisco. Cisco is sharing with us information. They are helping us in certain things, and we are sharing with them information. Other companies that actually are based in Jerusalem are IBM, Intel, Teva, and probably the jewel in the crown is Mobileye, that was just acquired by Intel for about $15 billion. And they are going to run the whole autonomous car business for Intel. The important thing here, and we'll probably talk about, you know, how difficult is this to get talents for this kind of operations, is that they are building now a very big campus in Jerusalem, and they need 4,000 engineers. So we have a lot of engineers and scientists coming out of the academic world in Jerusalem, but the question if it's going to be enough. And I'm talking about all sorts of, you know, the whole spectrum of expertise that we need. The other side of it is actually talking about the ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, and in Jerusalem, it's probably the fastest growing, definitely in Israel, maybe in the world. We're here talking about 2 years ago, there were only 250 startup companies in Jerusalem. Today, there are over 600, and we are supporting them in many various ways. I don't have the time to explain, but this is also very important. This is actually the future of the high-tech and biotech technologies in Jerusalem. The last thing I'll talk about is the digital citizen engagement, and we all know this subject very well. There is growing demand today for transparency, for accountability, for citizen engagement in reaching decisions, in helping decisions. They needed to be really, and we need to listen to them and get them involved in the decision making. So what we're doing now, and this is actually the work of the digital services department at it's in my division too, is really to build, and this is the last subject, by the way, that I'll talk about, obviously. This is actually the relationship that going through the red is the citizen, businesses, etc. In the middle is the system, and we are talking about the omni-channel systems, all various ways to communicate. And on the right are the officials from and employees in the municipality that actually supporting them in many ways in the city hall and outside in the field. So I'll just end up with actually showing a little bit of what this omni-channel engagement means. And we're talking about, you mentioned before, the bots, the chat bots. We're talking about the live chats, all sorts of communication. You can see it, but I think it's all actually summed up to three things. It's productivity, machine learning, that when we're talking about chatbots specifically, and analytics, actually analyzing the citizen opinion and all the rest of actually the activity that's being done with the citizen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. And the next speakers just arrived also this morning, Mr. Mikhail.
Hello, everyone. And while my presentation is being launched, I would like to say that I'm very excited to be in Ulyanovsk again. On the World Bank side, we have a very strong collaboration with this region, which is obviously one of the most innovative ones among Russian regions. A few years ago, we launched here our first ever open data readiness assessment, which then became a global product for the World Bank. Ulyanovsk volunteered to be the first region to be, the testing ground for this exercise. Now, just a month ago, we were here with the team, and the regional authorities learned that we're developing a methodology to assess readiness for digital economy, and they immediately volunteered to participate as well. And by the way, Ulyanovsk region also ranked first in World Bank's survey of doing business, subnational doing business among 30 Russian cities all across Russia in 2012. So in many respects, this is a remarkable region for us, and Ulyanovsk is a remarkable city, and I think it's no surprise that this particular event is taking place in this location. Now, let me go to my presentation, and I have very little time to speak in detail about the World Bank's journey in big data and digital economy overall, so I'm going to give you just a very quick snapshot of our activities and our thinking in this area. Let me see if it works. Okay, here it is. Let me skip the introductory part about what big data is about. Suffice it to say that many people would claim that the fourth industrial revolution is pretty much associated with big data. We when we ask to define what digital economy is, we always say that it's pretty much about real-time data exchange. Some people are saying that big data is a new factor of production alongside labor and capital. And basically, big data is at the center of new digital revolution. As far as World Bank is concerned, we have a big program on here it is on big data, and we acknowledge that we are just at the beginning of exploring social and economic effects of big data. Right now, what we are doing is to taking stock of what is being done in various World Bank finance projects involving the use of big data. Also, we are trying to kind of to survey the landscape in different countries across different projects involving different aspects of big data use. And when I was asked to speak about social and economic benefits of big data for smart city, I just decided to pick what I found the most exciting examples of big data use in, you know, urban development settings, because I believe that it is in the urban development settings, in the context of smart city development, that big data innovations play out most prominently. The World Bank runs regular big data innovation challenges. You can easily find information about these contests online. In 2014, actually, a number of winners of this contest, number of finalists, did projects related to big data used in urban context, and I will just briefly mention a few of those. A last contest was devoted to the issues of food security and forest management. And I believe that some of the examples of using big data in the context of smart city are those mentioned here. It's transport, financial services, security and crime prevention, and citizen feedback mechanisms. As far as using big data in transport is concerned, I can mention a few examples. This, the one that you can see on the screen, the project called Open Roads was implemented in the Philippines, and it was about creating an interactive multimedia portal and a set of digital tools to link official road data with crowdsourced geotagged video and image data from mobile devices to increase accountability and road network investment projects. Another example was actually implemented in our neighboring country in Belarus, and it was about installing an app in the mobile devices of drivers, of private drivers all across Belarus. And the accelerometers installed in every mobile device was measuring, the potholes and the quality of surfaces of the roads. And this data was collected in the centralized way, and that allowed the road management authorities in Belarus to track the quality of data in a very cost-effective and efficient way. The World Bank was involved in this project, and we're very proud to have been part of this effort. Another project is about collecting, visualizing, analyzing traffic big data derived from taxi drivers' smartphones. And I should make a remark that any of the projects that I'm mentioning are not unique, that these are just examples of many projects launched all around the world. They are just illustrations that are being implemented in particular locations. Smart London, this is the initiative that was implemented as part of city development strategy of London. And you can see some of the examples of what has been done. Another interesting dimension is collecting big data to track information about the use of financial services by citizens, especially those citizens that are underserved by the banking services. And this aggregate information can help financial institution, better target underserved strata of populations with financial services. Another interesting example is using big data for citizen engagement, and this is actually quite relevant for Russia. In the case of Brazil, which is the second largest user of Twitter in the world, the tweets that have been sent by citizens were used to analyze citizen sentiment about the government, about government institutions, and because a number of citizens were very unhappy about huge public investments into infrastructure for the World Cup, and they were comparing these investments with lack of investments in city infrastructure, and the government of Brazil was using this data to understand citizen sentiments and the corrective measures that have to be made to basically prevent social unrest because of the mismatch between investments into World Cup infrastructure and city infrastructure, something to take into account. Let me just quickly mention a few other examples. They are related to security and crime prevention. I would probably delay a discussion of lessons learned from this big data use examples in smart city contest. I hope we will have a chance to discuss it in the rest of our session. But let me just say a few words about what the World Bank is doing. Right now, we have a few initiatives related to open data and big data. In particular, we have an instrument called Open Data Readiness Assessment that we have implemented in a number of locations, starting from Ulyanovsk. We also have the instrument called Transport Open Data Readiness Assessment with a focus on open data for transport. More recently, we also developed a methodology for digital economy readiness assessment. And again, in Russia, we are doing a first ever implementation, a piloting of this methodology. I hope the results will be available later this year. And we're very open to collaboration with cities, regions, countries for further implementations of any of the instruments that I mentioned. So as long as you are interested in working on open data, big data, digital economy assessments, we are open for collaboration in either through analytics or through infrastructure projects. Let's continue this discussion and dialogue going forward. That's it. Thank you very much.
Mr. Joseph.
Thanks, Milena. Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh Choi. I'm from ITU International Telecommunication Union. Actually, quite a lot of issues already have been discussed with the previous speakers. So I'm wondering how to manage it from my part. But anyway, I'll try it. But let me start with some kind of story on my first day in Ulyanovsk. Actually, I was thinking in an airplane. Okay, so I'm coming to the conference related to smart and sustainable city, and then I was curious on something smart in this city. Actually, the first impression at the airport was not something that I expect, to be honest. But actually, something happened afterwards. Actually, I stayed in one of the apartments that I booked via Airbnb, and my Airbnb host very kindly arranged the taxi driver. And I just get on the taxi, and he didn't speak English at all. Of course, I didn't speak English, Russian at all. And then, but he turned on the Google Translate, and then he made very clear Russian speech on the app, and then the translation quality was quite good. So I had a lot of interesting, fun conversation with him for 30 minutes. So I know that he has got 3 children. Okay, this is the ski area. This is the the beach. Also, the bridge is 6 kilometers, and then blah 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 blah. So I think. And this something smart is completely different from what I expected. So I was thinking, okay, so what's the real definition of the smart in the cities? It was very interesting experience, and I think it is also very important for all of us to redefine really smartness of the cities according to the situation in the cities. So anyway, I'm going to talk about a little bit about AI and the fintech aspect of big data and IoT today. But not too much technical side, because there are lots of also technical experts here on the AI and the big data. Also, I think even in the audience, quite a lot of you actually also very intelligent expert in the technical side. So I don't want to compete with this. So I'll try to more on focus on social economic aspect, and also a little bit of regulatory and policy, even ethical impact of this technology on the cities. Can I use this one? Right. Okay. All right. So everybody's aware now is the SDG, right? But SDG is not just an abstract, global high-level challenges that only central governments or big organizations are concerned. But I think it is really big challenges for cities as well, because the more than half of the population are living in the city, but the cities actually take up only 3% of the land of the earth. It's actually the cities are really kind of smaller version of world, but it's not small, but it's really it's the world. So I think cities are places where people are living, and also the SDGs are also about our lives. So I think it's very logical to look at the really smart sustainable city issues from SDG perspective. So I suggest that we look in that way for the also issues of big data and IoT as well. So, until now, many smart city initiatives are more or less focused on, the connectivity, mobility, and some kind of efficiency, resource allocation, etc. Well, I was very happy to hear that Moscow already tackled some kind of health and education issues, which basically is one of the very important parts in the SDGs. But when you look at the really challenge of the smart city from SDG perspective, I mean, if we can move our view from government perspective on what kind of services we can provide to the actual challenges problem that our students are facing, I think we could also find more opportunity to find what are the real problem, and we probably can find more unknown problems to be solved. So basically, if you look at this as kind of vertical way, and this is really also vertical elements of the life in the cities, right? So for example, let's take a look at the gender equality SDG number 5. So if you start from this perspective, probably your question would be more focused on, for example, how can you make sure that the women in a city are treated equally, just like men in the public service, like legal code, like police station, rather than focusing on really equal access to the internet for the women. So basically, it's kind of different, perspective, right? So, and then maybe we'll be more motivated to how to solve it, and then we can really think about really out of box imagination, solution, thanks to really data revolution and AI revolution as well. So we could see, what kind of data we need, and how can they be used, and what kind of data we should additionally collect. Also, how can you collect them, and etc. etc. And also, if you like to see hunger, for example, you might be curious, for example, if there's any failing point in the logistics. Well, just in the US, I mean, the trailer tracks actually are on average only 60% full when they're on road. And globally, only 50% actually on full when they're on the road. So basically, it's really not efficient way. So sometimes, especially in really time-sensitive product like food and clothes, sometimes just unsold, just thrown away, just because distributor they just fail to deliver in a timely manner. Right, so maybe in a huge data set, tracing the movement of the food and the trucks maybe could give us really lots of interesting, different insights for us to understand where the real problem can be found, and how we could, feed more people by building more efficient logistics thanks to big data analysis and so on. So I think, everybody probably would agree, big data, can be a really cross-cutting, solution provider through all these, vertical area and the vertical elements of actually city lives, and then also can provide clue to solve these human problems, cities. So, but again, I think we would need to start from these real humanity challenges in the cities rather than, as infrastructure, connectivity, mobile issues, even though it is a really important fundamental element for the cities. And then the artificial intelligence can come in here to even make the big data even more powerful. So coming back to the gender equality issue, there's a very interesting example. A US-based startup, actually they developed an app based on machine learning and speech recognition that measures the relative contribution of men and women in a meeting by analyzing the time that they spend speaking. So basically, well, of course, it wouldn't be not enough. It wouldn't be enough to measure, the equality just only by the time they spend. But I think, we can really think about this kind of similar methodology to see how balanced the women are treated in public service. For example, recording all the call center, recording all the dialogue in the front desk of the public service. Maybe lots of this voice, information can be analyzed by the AI, and then we can see actually the problem where and to tackle how the women are treated in an equal way. And also another example is, for example, is a medical service. Did you know that actually the birth asphyxia is one of the top 3 causes of infant mortality in Africa? So it causes like the 1.2 million, deaths of the baby, and also another 1.2 million, severe lifelong, lifelong disabilities such as cerebral palsy. So, but this also creates a huge amount of medical costs for citizens, right? But one of the startups in Ghana developed a very interesting app, which basically can distinguish the difference of newborn babies' cries in case that they are suffering asphyxia. So because actually they're using different amplitude and different frequencies. So they can distinguish this baby is crying for just natural one or asphyxia. So I think, so they collected a huge amount of sound data of these older babies, and then they analyzed and they were able to distinguish, and then, it is really, have a big impact on the child mortality. So, I mean, again, actually the AI really can, give a huge opportunity for us to have a really out-of-box, solution, and thanks to this, all this revolution, I think this is a really important opportunity. But there are also some kind of challenges to it. For example, well, given the limited time I have, I will very quickly go on. The bias. So the more and more actually we are relying on the AI for automated decision making, I think there will be more and more issues about bias, because this is not because the AI is biased. Actually, we human beings are biased, and actually AI is learning it. Because basically, when we code the AI, basically sometimes we human beings sometimes unconsciously bias toward some of the issues. So basically, this bias is also a very, very important issue in the future as well. And then in line with bias, also kind of ethics, so the AI itself actually doesn't have any ethics, but then obviously human beings who are coding the AI, we have our ethics. So how can you really code really universally accepted ethics in the AI to make a really right decision making? And then this is another big challenge that we probably face in the future as well. And then data ownership. If you look at the internet traffic, actually 50% of internet traffic goes to only 2 companies, only 2 websites, is Netflix and YouTube. And then Facebook and Google, and they also cover like another 30% of something. So basically lots of data actually generated on the internet, actually owned by just a few companies. It's a kind of big, concern, right? So basically the data should be regarded as kind of common good, or like, our new natural resources, but only few people, only few companies are owning it, and then the power of AI, that's not good for the public good. So I think we also have to define who actually owns the data, and how we'll actually design the data governance in the future as well. Okay, so next, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about IoT and then IOV. Well, just like the big data, IoT also can be a also cross-cutting, problem solver through all these vertical elements of SDG. And then, but I believe that the Internet of Value is really important for the IoTs because, when you have a really IoT, basically, I think the IoT is really all about machines, trading with machines. For example, your fridge orders food, your car orders like fuel, or your television orders entertainment, and then so on. But however, machines cannot really trade with machines if the payment system is so slow or so expensive, and also it charges a lot of third-party fee or something like that. So unfortunately, the current 4-pillar card scheme and the Swift code system, well, it's not really perfect for the IoT and IOV era. So as a result, we need like the Internet of Value to work with the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Value actually allows all kinds of objects to trade with machines and people with people, and then in real time for free. So, but why is real IOV important? Because actually in the smart city, I think it's very much about, IOV, because, the seamless payment through the whole, element, like smart transportation, smart education, smart health, and smart public service will be one of the very crucial factor to define, how smart a city is. So IOV also can, build the inclusive financial service. I think my previous speaker also talked about the financial inclusion, because 2 billion others in the world don't have any bank access, but while 1.6 billion of them actually have a mobile phone. So basically, these mobile phones can play a role as a hub for their financial activity. But I mean, the Internet of Value basically really taking out the really third-party intervention, and then because it actually enables all the machines to directly transact to each other, and also it also can give lots of opportunity for economic growth, and then also the financial inclusion and the seamless payments through all the city infrastructure. So this is why I actually come with smart ABC just at the beginning. My moderator said, like artificial intelligence and banking and cities. So the reason why we combine these three sectors is that actually, well, these three sectors are really becoming more interrelated more than ever before. And then I think every sectors are really converged now. And so, but if you really wanted to build a smart city in the all different elements that I just showed in the SDG, field, we really have to create some kind of cross-sectoral debate. How many of us in this room actually have a financial background? How many of us in this room have an education background? How many of us actually are health experts? How many of us actually are legal experts? Basically, we really wanted to create a really multi-sectoral, discussion platform so that we can invite smart city people or finance people, AI people to get together and think about how we really build healthy and smarter cities in the future. This is just one of the new initiatives that we are having. So I really cordially invite all of you to join this one, and then we can think about the how we can build a more smarter city. Thank you very much.
Just now, last but not least, certainly, Mr. Kiwan Lee from Seoul Metropolitan Government. Today, he will also speak about resolving urban challenges and improving transparency of Seoul City through big data.
Hello, everybody. I'm Kiwan Lee from Seoul Metropolitan Government. It's time to have a lunch already, and so I must be brief. Today, I'd like to talk about how Seoul City is applying big data for city governance. First, I'd like to share some general information about Seoul. The size of Seoul is quite small, but it has more than 10 million citizens. Seoul has a lot of ICT resources, and more than 90% of Seoul citizens are smartphone users. Seoul citizens are very receptive to new digital technology. Then, how did Seoul implement big data to its public administration? I'll introduce an example. In Seoul, people are very active at night. A few years ago, a university student tweeted to Seoul mayor to propose late night buses in Seoul. At that time, there was no public transport from midnight to 5 in the morning. Taxi was the only transport, but it was quite expensive. For citizens' convenience and safe return to their home, we decided to introduce the late night bus at the lowest possible cost and set optimal bus routes that would meet the needs of citizens. Citizens. We collected and analyzed 3 billion phone call data from 12 a.m. to 5 a.m. Based on the analysis of the data and the billing addresses, we could find out the locations in which people take taxis from and want to go back at night and late night. Now, Seoul operates 9 post-midnight bus routes, and about 7,400 passengers use the late night bus every evening. Let me introduce another case. In 2016, we opened a website called Business Analysis in My Town to provide analysis reports of the business situation in each district to help new business commerce and small medium-sized business owners by providing information on business composition, monthly average sales, business survival rate, and rental price on each district. We are helping people to select the most competitive types of business and locations for their businesses. Like this, we are improving the convenience and the quality of life of citizens. In order to provide our citizens with an environment that they can analyze data, data campus, where citizens, students, and NGOs can access and analyze big data, which includes the ones created by the Seoul Metropolitan Government and the ones that we collected from the private entities. The Big Data Campus provides the physical space, equipment, analysis solutions to citizens to analyze socially and economically valuable data for creating urban problem solutions. Lastly, I'd like to talk about Seoul's latest data initiative. In 2017, we built the Digital Office for Citizens and Mayor platform at Seoul Mayor's Office. You can see that the exhibition booth, it is an interactive touch screen that integrates, visualizes, and provides key information on real time in traffic, disaster safety, city projects, civil complaints, and so on. Through this screen, Mayor of Seoul can also check the 800 CCTV camera feeds in real time to offer comments in case of disaster and incidents while not being on site. It helps Mayor to make a quick situational analysis, timely response, and data-based decision making. Let me show you a short video clip about how Digital Citizens and the Mayor's Office works. Yeah, I will recommend you to visit the Seoul booth in by side. Yeah, we will soon open this data online to share it with the citizens. They can utilize them, but of course, except the data that has privacy issues or sensitive information. I reached the end of my presentation. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
We run kind of late, but I know that probably some of you have some questions to the speakers. I would like to give the chance to anyone, questions or comments or remarks on the presentation. Please.
Thank you for your presentations. They're really remarkable of all the nice things that you're working on. Smart, sustainable cities for all. I want to ask about the sustainability part. Do any of your initiatives include measuring the energy and finding out ways of how to drive energy consumption down so that we can save money, because energy you have to pay for it, electricity and gas, and at the same time reduce carbon emissions? Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone wants to take this?
Sure. So we started, as I told, with a citywide IoT platform to monitor consumption of different resources. Frankly saying, the energy is pretty cheap here in Russia, but it's still important. So yes, firstly, we connected all the governmental buildings to the system so we can evaluate which buildings consume more energy or less energy, and then plan some refurbishment or modernization of the system based on the data that we are collecting. So now we're connecting to the same system all the housing, residential buildings, to the same purpose, to plan reconstruction, to plan modernization of the networks, to implement new systems. So this is the second part. But sure, this platform allows for citizens to connect their meters soon. Just some competition between the residents of one building, who consumes less energy or less water within the champion of the month. For example, in the active citizen, we also got gamification for voting, for answering the question of the city. Citizens do receive some points that can be changed to parking, to tickets to metro, to horse riding, museums. So being a winner who consumes less water or less energy, you will also receive some points that can be changed for something in the city. And also we are planning now to launch a smart district to test more energy efficient solutions. It will be very different from what is done, for example, in Amsterdam, in Finland, or in Barcelona, because there is new buildings or completely refurbished buildings. We're planning our smart district in an old district with different buildings inside, built from 15th of last year to 19th of the last year, very different, to understand how these energy efficient solutions could be adopted to very different range of buildings. So yeah, and we're gonna test more like solar panels, like heating that it's tied with real temperature on the street, not how it's done now. Have I answered your question? Yeah.
Do you have targets like, oh, we want to drive, currently we're using X amount of energy, we emit X amount of greenhouse gases from the buildings, and we want to get to X by when?
Look, I'll be frank, and yeah, frankly saying, according to the strategy of the city, we're redeveloping it, and I think that we'll put some KPIs, long-term KPIs. But now basically it's very easy. We know the consumption, we know the cost of this for citizens and for the city, and we evaluate the cost, the capexes and opexes for the implementation of new systems. And if we see that within the one contract, the life of one contract, which is basically 3 to 5 years, the system allows to reduce the costs and to become profitable. So to return the investments within 3 or 5 years that we did in those systems, it should be done. This is how we work now in Moscow.
I guess that's answering your questions, right? Any other questions, or do you Any other remarks or comments from other speakers?
Well, I understand actually where you're coming from, and definitely I think sustainability is something on the table all the time. It's just when we are going into any kind of refurbishment, I mean, this is one of the issues on the table, and you know, the constructors are actually being chosen according to this type of limits and standards that they have to stand. When we're talking about a new kind of district that we're building, like the business district I talked about, this is a completely different scene. There, you know, we'll use all the knowledge that exists in the world actually to drive down, you know, the amount of energy used, etc. So there we have more flexibility. We don't have much flexibility in existing business, unfortunately, buildings, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. Oh, yes, one more question.
Я попрошу перевести. Мне Катар. I would like that question to be translated to Ethan. When you build up your fiber optical communication lines, when you build your communication lines, you have to deal with an issue of land and building owners. Is there any federal legislation that would enable you to do that? Thank you.
I missed the translation. I'm so sorry. But probably two of my. Okay, you can.
I hope I understand the question.
The question is about
Yes.
how to deal with owners of land when laying down the fiber optic networks in the city.
So our problem is not just the ownership; it's the fact of really going and digging in the ground, even if it belongs to us. It's not. It's the problem is not actually when we're not thinking of getting into other people's property, but even in our own, let's say, the land that controlled by the gardens, the streets, the pavements that controlled by the government, the local government in this case, it's just impossible to do it. It's expensive. I mean, you cannot block the road for days. You cannot, you know, it's very slow. So our problem with deploying fiber optics are not a matter of ownership. And so we are looking at a solution where we, by the way, have the ownership of the light poles, for example, that we can put antennas on, the rooftops that we have ownership of, and then we can create the line of sight. So actually, we're moving from the ground to the air and to the different types of layers actually in the city. So no, actually, ownership of others is not our problem. I hope it's answered. I mean, if I understood the question correctly.
У нас в России существует проблема. We have a problem with owners in Russia with when we design communication systems. And now an issue of this is on the agenda at the State Duma of the Russian Federation about priority permission for designing the safety systems in the housing buildings over the traffic roads and over the plots of lands. There is no effective federal legislation so far. So my question was about the legislation. Is there any effective federal legislation that would force an owner to let the municipal, the metropolitan communication networks go through their lands or through their buildings? That is the question about the federal legislation, if any.
It's actually, it's the best practices. You pay, you get it. And they don't mind to give it to you when actually you pay. When I'm talking about the roofs. When I'm talking about the light poles, for example, it belongs to us, so we don't have a problem. When you're talking about just digging the ground, I mean, we never actually had this chance to go into other people's property, so we're not doing it, and this is not a problem. The only problem we have when it comes to regulations, as I said before, is getting the license from the government.
Единственная проблема, о которой я раньше говорил, это
much better off and we can do things. Obviously, you know, you cannot just climb on a building and put an antenna without asking the owner what he thinks about it. But, you know, money buys everything, right? So this is the solution.
Okay, thank you. I guess we would like to keep our time for also the next session, so I need to wrap it up. But I really thanks all the speakers. We saw so various innovation in the city. I think technology brings that. One solution to another can be quite diverse. There are similarities, but all these five speakers talking about all kind of new things. I think the opportunities are endless. And if you would like to know more, there's an open invitation to talk a little bit more about their project. And I'm sure it can be benefiting because we need to leverage this kind of knowledge. Thank you so much, and let's give our warmest applause to all the speakers. And okay, we will take a picture first, and then I'll let Tony later on to inform someone.
And one extra announcement is that tomorrow there's a cultural tour by bus at 2 p.m. So there's limited space. There's about 130 spaces. If you're interested in taking that tour, the sign-up sheet is at the registration desk. Thank you very much. Yeah.